Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Chris, along with my good friend, Mr. Frank Fear. Frank, welcome in. And another Wednesday night is falling upon us, and this time talks about Mountaineer goodies.
I'll tell you what, there's still a lot going on. And that's the great thing. And even better is that we're getting closer to that opening kickoff, which is uh, which is the one that really gets the juices flowing, right?
Yeah, I know. Last week we joked people counting it down 103 days till kickoff, and I think we're down in the 90s now. So I know everybody's counting down, especially now. The NBA finals are over, hockey's over for the hockey fans out there. Everything's kind of ended, and unless you're just a huge baseball fan, right now is a tough time for sports fans unless they're just big baseball fans. And I like baseball, but I don't sit and watch it. So yeah, it's kind of a dry spell for me, and I can't wait. I always like when it starts getting a little bit cooler at night, and fall gets in the air, and it's here. And I know a lot of people are like that because there's a lot of football fans out there. So yeah, closer we get, the more exciting it gets, and the more we read and hear, the more exciting it gets. And I know we're going to take a little dive into that tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the roster and some of the pieces that have been put in place and our thoughts about that. Of course, we have our resident expert Mark Parsons going to be on with us talking about those things as well. And of course, we got also the baseball team. We got some good news on the baseball front. And number one is we were ranked again high. I think top 15, 16 maybe. And I think Mark said that was the second year in a row now, of course, that we've been ranked high. And great baseball season. And I'll let you, the coach, West Virginia coach was named, and I forgot what you called it, so I'll let you do that. So everybody will know what award he won.
Well, it was the Eastern Coach of the Year for baseball, and he certainly deserved that. What a heck
That's
of a
real
first
complicated.
year.
Real
Yeah, first
complicated.
year.
I couldn't remember that Eastern coach of the year.
The
Okay.
Eastern Coach of the Year. Hey, do you put that on? Does he put that on a sweatshirt or a T-shirt? What? Anyway,
I think I
but
know.
he did a good job. And that series against LSU, when it was happening, we weren't very happy. But gosh darn, LSU won the national championship.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
really bizarre because the Coastal Carolina head coach, got thrown out in the first inning of the second game on balls and strikes. Those balls and strikes were a
Yeah.
little bit
Oh
surprising, but
gosh.
good for Coach Sabins. And we've been following. We've been talking about the recruiting. Recruiting is really going very well. It's clear that they have a great system in place. A number of players have been signed, both coming from high school as well as coming through the portal. And it's clear that he's going to try to repeat that magic with Griffin Kern, who came from Quincy University, D2 school, I think. They've signed a lot of players at the lower levels whom they think are ready to move up to major college baseball. And so I think we have a lot to look forward to next year. I think it's really odd you're talking about the seasons. The spring football season comes to a close. The National Basketball Association comes to a close the same day that the college World Series ends. So you got all these sports ending at about
Over.
the same time, and that obviously, where we were growing up, that's not the way it was.
No, no, and yeah, I always say that it seems to me like they play the Stanley Cup and the WNBA playoffs happen every 3 or 4 weeks, and it seems like they're always playing the Stanley Cup and always playing the WNBA playoffs. These these seasons are so long, and
I know.
this NBA season, my gosh, I mean this thing started back in October, and
Yeah.
goes clear up into the middle of the summer, but again, when they end, it's just suddenly there's a void. It's over. And again, I'm not a huge NBA fan. I do watch some NBA, but when the championship's on, I'll sit and watch. And I watched most of the final game there the other night, and does give you something to watch, even if you're not a huge fan. And they all end at one time, and you're like, oh gosh, what are we gonna do now? So what do? We start looking forward to football season, and
Yeah.
it'll be here before you know it. I mean, it seems like it's forever away, but it'll creep up on us before we know it, and we'll be rolling and there with them, and could have easily been us. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes to show that can happen, and but yeah, and I'm sure Coach will get that sweatshirt printed up. I know it's funny you said that the other day. My wife and I were having a discussion. We started talking about I forget what got us on it, but I said something about back when I coached basketball. I said, "Well, I've got like 4 plaques down in the basement, Coach of the Year plaques from our conference that we were in. I'm like, what am I going to do with those things? Here we're talking about cleaning out the basement." I said, "Did I just throw them in the trash, or what if I could melt them down and maybe, get some gold or something out of them?" I doubt that very much, but she said, "Well, maybe your kids would like them." I'm like, what? What do you do with this stuff? I'm not going to plaster that up on my wall anywhere, but I did want to make sure everybody heard that, Coach of the Year. No, I was laughing when you said that because I'm thinking, yeah, you win those things and they're nice and you appreciate it and all that, but it's not something you wear around on your on your chest, for everybody to see. So I'm sure he'll be grateful for the award, but I doubt we'll hear much more about it from him. So,
Well, you're talking there gave me an idea. You've got your Coach of the Year awards. I've got all these bullet holes in the wall from passerbys. I might want to take those bullets out and see if I can melt them down
there you go.
and get some money out of it because Greg, they're all over the place. It has nothing to do with this show, but it's just as they say in the business, it's my personality. That's what's causing.
It's that car you drive.
That's right. That's right. Which we won't name on the show.
That's right. That's why I didn't say it. That's why I didn't say it.
No, it starts with a T, by the way. But one thing seriously, when you think about it, you think about this long season, and you look at that terrible injury the other night. That you could almost see it coming.
Yeah.
The Pacers lost a great player. Loved him because he played for Iowa State. I went to school there, and he's a great player. Yeah. But what's interesting is when you think back to your career as a coach, you were practicing during the season, right, with your players in between games?
Yep. No. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
That is something that is not done all that frequently in the NBA. They just can't afford it.
Right. Right. And you look at the past couple of years, and I've heard a couple of lengthy discussions about this yesterday and today on a couple of the shows I watch about these Achilles tears. And they had a doctor on talking about it. And he said, basically what's happening is they're just not, like you said, they're not using it. And he said there's so much load management, they call it. They rest. They don't stretch properly. They don't stretch that part of their body properly. He said there's a lot of things they can do to lessen the chances of that happening. But my big problem with what happened to Tyrese Halliburton, and the same thing happened to Jason Tatum. Kevin Durant had the same thing. They have that calf strain, and they talk about when you have the calf strain, there's a much greater likelihood that you're going to tear an Achilles because of that calf strain. And they were talking about whether or not he should have played in that game. And I know he's their best player, he's an all-star, all that. But when there's a 50-50 even chance, which I think the chances were greater, and obviously they came out to be 100%, but I think the chances they talked about were greater than that. And that's your franchise player. You're going to risk it, and I know it was the Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I get that. But at the same time, this will affect, it will affect his career. And, he will play, I doubt very seriously if he'll play next year, I wouldn't think. Same with Tatum, I don't know that he'll play at all next year. And, are they ever going to be the same afterwards? Even when they come back, they're not. And, and that's not to say it couldn't happen in the third game next year. I mean, it could happen, but the likelihood of it happening the other night was high, and it happened, and it's such a sad thing. And You feel horrible for him because you know he wanted to play. You feel horrible for the coach because I'm sure he went to him and said, "What do you think?" You know, players are players; they want to play, and ownership, I'm sure, is thinking, "Well, we pay him a lot of money to play. We want him to play if he can." But now you look what you have, and may have not may have, but will have tarnished his career going forward. And but these injuries are happening uh, too much now. When you didn't used to hear of things like that. You even see it in football, or one of the quarterbacks, Watson, tore his. You wonder if this load management thing is this not practicing, not going to constantly is having an impact or not.
Mm-hmm. And you see it with stress fractures of the foot a lot. And I've noticed that oftentimes, not completely, but in a lot of cases, those stress fractures are not randomly distributed. That you see them concentrated in certain teams, which tells me that it probably relates to the practice routine, how much they're practicing and what they're having them do, and all the things that are going on that are program specific. But yeah, it's really fascinating. The world of sports is changing so much. Before we get to football and bring Mark in, we want to give all the luck to Javon Small. They start the draft at 8 o'clock tonight on ABC, ESPN, and Javon is basically being evaluated along the lines of a Deuce McBride, basically a relief point guard that can take over if the number one guard goes down or needs to rest. And they've got him. I'm just looking here to make sure I have it right. CBS Sports has him at 49, picked in the second round tonight. And so let's just keep our fingers crossed, because I'll tell you what, wasn't he just an incredible athlete to watch? All Big 12, should have made All-American. He was second team, but his numbers are just unbelievable. Last year, 19 points a game, 6 assists a game, 4 rebounds a game, 2 steals a game, and he durable, 36 minutes average. He's the real deal. I wish we had him more than 1 year.
Yeah, and not only that, you look at those stats that don't tell the whole story, and that is when Tucker DeVries went out. He was our lone go-to guy, and teams were double teaming him, triple teaming him, jumping off the screens on him. They really picked up the defense on him and made it difficult for him to, not just score, but to get the ball, because they were trying to deny him the ball and those type of things. So he really had to fight through. And I just think that, his stats are good, but not nearly as good as they would have been had he been paired with somebody else, where the team just couldn't focus all their attention onto him. And but yeah, what a player! And speaking of Deuce, hopefully he'll get some more playing time now. He came in and plays great, but their coach was kind of he liked to play 7 players, and that was it. And they fired him, so maybe Deuce will get some time now, because
that is one of the reasons that he was let go. I mean, there's obviously a lot of chatter in the Big Apple about that, because actually they did really well under him as a team. I mean, they hadn't been in the Eastern Finals. The last time was 1999. And so here we are, a quarter of a century later, and they made it. But he just not tremendous in terms of using his bench as effectively as he could. And Darren, by the way, reminds me, as we shift over to football, that we wanted to make an announcement, and we've got a graphic. And this is certainly the folks, it's right there. The folks who watch us or are familiar with the Voice of College Football Network know this, at least most will know, but those watching on the New River Network may not. And that is, it's really as a courtesy, because we simulcast on the Voice of College Football. The Voice of College Football Network distributes to the channels, the various channels, simulations of their teams playing games weeks before they actually play it. And so it's free. You go on YouTube, you go to West Virginia, the Voice of College Football, and you can watch 3 simulations already They've got WVU Pitt, WVU Kansas, and WVU Utah, each about an hour and a half long. The graphics are unbelievable. It's a graphic, but it's really high quality. It's free, both to access the channel and also to watch it. So we encourage you to go over there and check it out and enjoy the simulations and see what you think. I think it gives you another level of discussion with your friends, colleagues, and family members.
Frank, I know I'll go over just out of curiosity just to see who our starting left tackle is. They usually have their names on their jersey, right. So we'll know who the starting quarterback is, and so we'll see what the computers think is going to be our roster makeup. So yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. We'll watch some of them last year and talked about them, and yeah, it's a really neat thing, neat way that they do that. So that'd be fun. So everybody needs to check that out. That'll be over on YouTube, and like I said, they've got 3 up now, and they'll have more as time goes on. And they'll probably get a little more accurate as time goes on once they know players and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty cool thing to just check out. Like you said, stuff to talk about, So, all right. Well, without further ado, let's bring in our, as I called him earlier, our resident expert on the Mountaineers. He's got some input on the roster we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Really not anything solid that we know of. Mark will have a better handle on that, I'm sure, than what Frank and I do. Mark, welcome to the show. Mark Parsons, everybody.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, and Mark's down in the great state of Tennessee, and I hear it's a little warm down there, and it's warm here as well. But I bet Tennessee is
107 heat index. It's pretty hot.
It is hot. Well, Frank, if you want to lead this discussion, you sent out some information about the different positions, which I did read and read through all of it, and got some thoughts on it. But I think, in my mind, we'd be better to let Mark go ahead and give us a little breakdown of our roster. Maybe start with the offense and skill positions, and then maybe the offensive line, and then we can hash that out a little bit, and then we'll move over to the defense. So, Mark, if you want to go ahead and take off with it and start with the offensive side and tell us what you got.
Okay, well, just kind of going to talk a little bit about the depth chart for the offensive line first. I've got a total of 18 players on the roster, which is a good number. They've got that number kind of where they want it. But now just keep in mind that all of these pieces of this puzzle are changing daily, and they're probably going to change again. There's going to be there's a lot of shakeup in this roster, as far as there's only a few positions that are really set in stone, and a lot of new faces. And just to move right along with it, left tackle. Right now, they currently have Nick Cray listed at left tackle. He is returning from the Neil Brown era. And his backup, who's going to give him a run for his money, is Malik Agbo. He's a transfer from Texas. And he's a good one. And then behind him is Xavier Bosley, who transferred from Jacksonville State in Neil Brown's final season. He's a native of South Charleston and has a bright future with him as well. All 3 of those guys are solid, and will be interesting to see how all that plays out. Now at left guard, we've got Walter Youngbear, and he's a transfer from Tulsa, and was a starter there. And they've got the second team, Donovan Haslam, transfer from Austin P down here in Tennessee. He was also a starter there. And then on the third string, they've got Josh Aosa, who's a transfer from Oklahoma. He's a young player, not a lot of experience, but should have a bright future. And then at center, we have a player that has experience playing at West Virginia. Landon Livingston's currently listed as number 1. And behind him is another transfer, a Huntington native, transfer from NC State, Robbie Martin, who's going to be a good one in the future. Came highly recruited out of high school, and I think he's got a bright future as well. Mm-hmm. Now, flipping to the other side at right guard, Carson Lee, he started at Eastern Michigan, then went to Mississippi State, and now he's at West Virginia. He made the statement he didn't come here to not start, and currently he's listed as the number 1 right guard. Behind him is Aiden Bussell, transfer from Tennessee, and then someone who was at the top of the depth chart during spring ball and has kind of backed off is Kimo McAnally. He's a transfer from LSU that had played some defensive line and offensive line at LSU, but here he's listed as a right guard on offense, so we'll see how that plays out. Then a right tackle, Tykeus Crawford from Arkansas. He's a transfer from Arkansas. I think he started out at Charlotte and then transferred to Arkansas. And then behind him is Mikel Clay. He's a transfer from North Alabama. He's a native of Cincinnati, Ohio. So you've got, a lot of that 3 depth at most of those positions. And then you have 6 offensive linemen on the depth chart. 4 of them are being holdovers from the Neil Brown era. And then a couple of transfers have came in as well. One being Wyatt Minor from Youngstown State's Clarksburg native, but they aren't on the depth chart. They're just they're in a position group. So we'll see how everything comes together. But they do have a lot of bodies. I think a lot better shape numbers wise than we have been in the past.
Yeah, and I think looking at that. Sorry, Frank. Looking at that list that Frank had sent, reading about these guys, I really feel like this offensive line is going to be fine. I mean, there's some you look at some statistics and play from last year and that sort of thing. Some pretty good players there, and I think that offensive line is going to be in good shape.
Well, I think the big thing is how well they're going to gel. I think the talent's there. I think it's just how well they come together. Last year at Jacksonville State, Rodriguez kind of did the same thing, had a lot of transfers after spring practice, and they didn't really come together until about the 3rd game, which would be the Pitt game this year. But we're going to have some, especially against Ohio University, we're going to have to play well. We don't want to go down there and lose. But I think if they can get it together, and come together with the right chemistry, I think that's going to be a pretty good group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you did a great job as always, Mark, going over that. And I'll tell you what, I mean, we talked about this months ago. Particularly when you think of Rich Rodriguez's approach to the game, that room, that unit, the offensive line is really, really important because he runs a lot, and we've really got to have a class offensive line, and we lost everybody. I mean, one of the strengths under Brown, particularly as time went on, was that offensive line. And they all left, either graduated, went to the pros, transferred, whatever. And so used up their eligibility. And what's interesting about this is, and we were asking this early on, we knew as Coach Rodriguez and staff were stockpiling, that there wouldn't be room for everyone. So the question became not only who would make it, but the bottom line is how many of those early picks, particularly in the portal, were going to survive over time, and how many in the Brown era would survive. And what's interesting about it, we talked about it last week, one of the reasons I'm feeling better, and it's probably me, that's just me, about the season, is that with all the churn, with all the folks who are coming in, it was tough to be able to really sift and sort and say who's going to end up. But there really is a lot of when you look at people like Bosley, who's been here for 2 years now, second year, came from Jacksonville State, and Landon Livingston, people like that. And then what you do is you mix in some of the newcomers that were getting a lot of press. So this looks to be a lot more stable, and it's clear. And I'll end with this: he needed those numbers. 18 sounds like, my God, a monster number. But when you're putting Humpty Dumpty back on the wall, you've got to be able to have folks to choose from. The question becomes, at the end of the day, how many of those will still be on the roster come kickoff time at the end of August?
Well, you have to have numbers to practice. You have to have depth because you're going to have injuries. I think he's built I think he has depth. I mean, he has three at each slot lined up, on the depth chart already. I think he's got a good foundation. It just the chemistry is going to be the big thing, I think. As far as some of those younger guys that are not on the depth chart yet, it's not like it used to be where you can, play in that system for a year in red shirt and then get a spot in the rotation. They have to have players that can play now, and if you don't progress, it could be, you could be shown the door, unfortunately, in this new era.
Mark, the only thing that really surprises me, and again, it may just be me, see what Greg thinks about this too. I was surprised when you let off with Cray. When you look at his portfolio, his body of work, really a special teamers for the most part. That's what he's been. And now you're saying he looks to be locked in at left tackle.
I'm not saying he's locked in. He's right now he's listed as number one on the charts that I've seen. I'm going kind of by what's on Rivals, what I've seen on there. And like I said, I think he's going to get pushed from Agbo and Bosley are both going to push him. You're not going to know until game week or game day, maybe, on who's going to start. And I think that's fine because I think you need to have a surprise, for everybody. Same thing with quarterback. We're not going to know for sure until they come out there and line up. I think, that's a surprise. I guess they're kind of right now. It's based upon his experience. Agbo wasn't here for spring practice, so we're going to see how a lot of these guys weren't, but they're on the depth chart high up there. So we're going to see how it all plays out. I mean, I think he must have seen some things in spring practice that didn't knock his socks off because he hit it hard in that portal afterwards and brought in a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Frank, I agree with you. I saw the same thing there when I saw that he had participated in, I think it said 12 or 13 games, but it was all special teams. So that, threw up a little bit of a red flag, and he didn't have much experience at tackle, and then be listed first. But I'm like Mark. I think that, that's probably just because of him being here, them knowing him, they put him there for now. But like Mark said, they brought in some players that look like, just based on what you look at, what they did last year, where they played, and that sort of thing. A couple of good guys over at that left tackle side.
Yeah. That one of the guys that came in early was Walter Youngbear from Tulsa, and there was a lot of spotlight on him. And then later on, when they started bringing in the Power 4 guys, when you think of Agbo, I mean, one of the things we talked about was that this guy is, he played in all 16 games last year for Texas, and also Robbie Martin. Although your sense on him, Mark, is what's his stock been doing?
I think he's got a good future. I think he's got to get some experience, and I think that's right now. I think that's why he's number 2, because he's he redshirted down at NC State, and he's going to have to get some experience. And on the line, the offensive and defensive line, you really have to be in the program a year before you can really. It's rare to jump into the lineup, into the rotation even. That first year. Now, Watt, Milam, and Zach Frazier, Dan Moses, they were all exceptions, but it's few and far between that do that. And a lot of it has to do with getting stronger and your body type, getting some of that baby fat off and getting adjusted.
Yeah, it's maybe the most intriguing guy in the bunch that you mentioned is Makanole, because not only did he play at LSU, which means he played in the SEC, but he played both offense and defensive line. I haven't heard anything, not a whisper, of whether or not he might be used on the defensive side if needed. But that tells me if he was at such a high level in the SEC, playing both sides of the ball, first of all, it tells me he's smart to be able to pick up those systems. And given the number of games that he played, I can't remember if I ever knew the circumstances as to why he left Baton Rouge. But I think he's certainly intriguing, and he's a guy I think we got to watch.
There's a lot of we're going to watch. I tell you that my sleeper on here is this Carson Lee guy. Came from Mississippi State. Yeah. He said, I didn't come here to not start, and he didn't even go through spring ball. He's worked himself right up to the top of the heap here so far. So we'll see. That's the attitude you got to have, though, and I'll take it for now. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, well, I know that name because he was scheduled to go to Mississippi State. I don't think he ever played there. He was at Eastern Michigan, which is
spring practice, I think.
Yeah,
and left.
Yeah, my neck of the woods, and so I've heard of him. And Eastern can spring an upset or two, in the MAC.
Yeah,
and so I know a little bit about him. The thing again, and Greg and I were talking about it last week, and let me start, Greg, and see what you think. What this does for me emotionally, especially you now giving us more depth than we had last week when it was just Greg and me, is more the blood pressure going down a bit. The fear is that, you got to go through a down year to get to the up years. That may happen, but the fact of the matter is, Rodriguez and staff have worked their tails off, coming in later than they wanted to, obviously, to bring in players and to sift and sort. And this, now the cream is rising to the top.
Yeah, and I think in 2002, when he came the first time, or 2001, you had 2 to 3 years to develop the program. He doesn't have that anymore. He's going to be expected to win right away. Now, he may not, they may win 6 or 7 games this year. They might win them all, nobody knows for sure, or they might win 3. But he's expected to win right away, and the approach is totally different now with the NIL and the portal. And I will give him credit. I think that he's brought in an excellent staff. Now, I tell you, the surprise for me on that, or the one that's really kind of shaking things up, is this guy that after Bill Stewart's son left, they brought in that guy from Auburn, and he recruits Tennessee, he recruits Texas, Oklahoma, out in that area. We've already got commits from that area. He was also helping get some of these players in, that transferred in from Oklahoma and Texas this year. They said he was a good recruiter, and he must really be. I've been impressed with him so far. That Texas we've had a few players coming out of there, but we've not had a whole lot of success out there. We've had a few but maybe things are turning here. I know they've got a few committed already for future years up from Texas and the Oklahoma area. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it's I think he's got a great staff, and as we've talked previously, every successful coach at WVU, whether it's Art Lewis, Carlin, Bowden, Nealon, Bill Stewart, whoever, have all had excellent staffs. And I think Rodriguez has put one together that's going to be very comparable to what they have.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Mark. I think your average fan don't really pay any attention to that, but when you look at the staff he has put together, it does make you feel pretty good because he's got some, some guys that have been through it, and some guys that have been at major programs that he's poured in, and defensively, and the recruiting part of it is, of course, utmost importance. But going back to what Frank said about the blood pressure going down and that sort of thing, it does. After seeing and hearing what you're saying here, makes you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident in what they're doing. And you think about Rich Rod's time when he first came the first time. He was fairly young, relatively inexperienced as a head coach. And it took a while to get his footing, but you look at him now, I mean, he's a veteran guy and he's been around and he's been through the changes of the game. And I think he has a good grip on it. He has a good understanding of how it works. And I think that the staff he brought in is the same way. And I feel 100% better about, going into this season. And again, I don't want to knock any previous coaches or anything like that, but you have a different feeling now. And even if you go in and you win 3, 4, 5 games this year, you still feel confident enough in him and the staff that he's put together and his knowledge of the way the system works that he's going to get it turned around and it's going to be in good shape.
Well, I think he brought in Bicknell's on the offensive line. He's familiar with Rodriguez. They coached together at Ole Miss. He knows his system. He's a veteran coach. I think he's a good recruiter too. He seems to have gotten some good ties in some areas we haven't done a lot in the Midwest and up in the upper Northeast. We haven't been up in that area in a while. And I think, he kind of turned the defense over to Zach Alley and kind of let him pick have influence on who he picked. And I think the defensive back coaches that he's brought in, we're going to notice a difference there. They may not be as fast as they want to be in the future, but I think they're going to be aggressive. And both guys can recruit. And it's evident in the roster, how many guys have we signed out of the state of Washington and Oregon and all those places? We haven't. So they're bringing in kids from all over the country, and hats off to those guys because it's kind of opened up a whole new area of recruiting for us.
Well, when you think about it from an analytical point of view, even though the eras have changed, and as Greg talked about it, and you did too, you've got to do this lickety split. It's can you bring in quality players? Can you get them to work together? Can they learn your system? And does the system fit the league you're in? Those are all standard stuff. And I think from my perspective, Rodriguez gets very high grades on being able to bring in a lot of players, sift and sort them. He knows what he's looking for. He's been around. And yet, and you know this because you've probably read it or you watched a video or seen it on television, and that is there are some people who basically will analysts will wipe that all away and basically say, okay, West Virginia, look at what happened at UCF. How did that go? They brought back a guy. What about North Carolina? They brought back a guy there too. At least at North Carolina, it's similar to West Virginia because Mac Brown had been the coach at North Carolina before he went to Texas. But the fact of the matter is there are some analysts who are basically saying you want a successful program, you got to start fresh. And even if you've had success with the coach at a previous time, because the world has changed. You're gambling by bringing that same coach back. And I think there is something to be said about that, but bluntly, I don't buy it, particularly in this particular circumstance, because I think Rich Rod has matured in a variety of ways. I think he's brought in, as you said, a great staff. And now we're beginning to see, I think, the fruits of the recruiting. Now, if you look at where West Virginia is in terms of its portal standings and its freshman recruiting, it's still not where you want it to be. But I think you can overreact in that regard. And so I think we got a fighting chance. And I saw a prediction this last week that had WVU at 7-5, and I think fourth or fifth in the Big 12, and also predicted a continuing down year for Oklahoma State, for example, and so we'll just see. Obviously, predicting is almost insane because who knows what will happen. But
Sure.
I feel a lot better than I did a couple months ago.
Well, I can think of a couple of coaches that have done successful on returning. Mike Riley at Oregon State, Bill Snyder at Kansas State. And there have been a lot of them that didn't do well. Johnny Majors went back to Pitt. John Robinson at Southern Cal. Mac Brown, of course. But
I think
I'm being a homer here, but I'm just going to say I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm hoping for the best. So.
Yeah, one thing too, I think, some of those guys, Mike Brown, for example, Robinson, when they came back, they were much, much, much older, and I don't mean that in a terrible way toward older folks like myself and Frank, but Rodriguez is still a young man, and
yeah.
he's still, not that these other guys weren't. I don't have any idea about that, but you kind of feel like with Mike Brown, for example, that did he really understand the portal and NIL? Did he really get all that and really understand how to use it and that sort of thing? Well, you don't really know. You feel like Rodriguez still has a good grip on that because he's not that old. He's still a young man, and he's come up in that in that type of an environment. Whereas Mike Brown coached 35, 40 years ago and coached that way for 20, 25 years the same way. And then all of a sudden, here comes the portal, here comes NIL, and he has to adapt to that. And you wonder how well they're able to adapt. A lot of them obviously can't because they get out of the game completely and don't come back. But Rodriguez, that started, several years into his career, but he hadn't been in it 40 years. He'd been in it 8, 9 years when that started, and he's come full circle with it. He's dealt with it, knows how to do it, and again, he's still a fairly young man. So yeah, I think that part of it's going to be fine.
Well, again, his coaching staff, he seems to be able to relate to younger players and the players that are up today, and they've changed. But he's brought in a good mix on his coaching staff. He's got some young guys that can definitely relate to this crowd, this type of kid right now. Then he's got some older guys, and they seem to be doing pretty well. I mean, they've been recruiting well, so I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's see how it all plays out. I'm hopeful. So.
Yep, absolutely.
And the point you made about Kansas State, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because this issue of you can't recycle successfully, I think it's taken too far because you gave examples of people who came back. And I think we have many more examples of coaches who have been successful and stayed at their place too long. And I hate to say it, but certainly Bobby Bowden. If you look at the record, the last 4 or 5 years at Florida State, here was a guy that was competing for national championships, and now his teams are at 600 or at 500 or hugging 500. And the issue that you face with programs like that, and I would say Kansas State is another example, Michigan was another example, is it becomes so person dependent. He's the guy. When Penn State, when you think of Penn State, you think of Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
When you think of Ohio State, you thought of Woody Hayes. When you thought of Kansas State, you thought about Bill Snyder. And so one of the things they had to do, and those schools all went through a period, in fact, Florida State's still not back, and that is being able to get the right guy after you've had a legend. And you look at Kansas State, as soon as he left, they went down, and they brought him back. And then again, so it's taken them a while, and now they have the guy. And I think that it reinforces another point we made, and that is you don't just bring in a coach, you bring a coach from a program. And what Kansas State did, Wyoming did it too with success, and that is the northern tier universities, the North Dakota states in particular, has been a feeder system, and that's where the Kansas State coach, who's doing very well, came from North Dakota State. So I think that's really important. And Rich Rod, I think he'll be fine. And also another indication is that he wasn't bringing in many folks from Power 4 schools. And as time has gone on, we mentioned this last week, and we'll talk about this as we now move on to talk about the wide receivers and tight ends. We're seeing more Power 4 guys come through the portal.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those points. Moving on, if you want to move on to the tight ends or the wide receivers first.
Sure.
We got 13 total in the position room, total wide receivers. Again, this is got a couple of familiar names, but there's a lot of new ones, and I'm probably going to see some movement here as well. But at the X receiver, they've got number 1 listed as Cam Vaughn, who was the top receiver at Jacksonville State that's transferred in. Behind him, and this guy I think is one that's going to be one I want to watch, is Jeff Weimer, transferred from Idaho State. He originally started, I think, at UNLV and then went to Utah State before ending up at Idaho State. The guy has been a 1,000-yard receiver every season he's played in. He's tall, kind of lanky, and I think he may turn out to be a pretty good player. Then after him, we got Christian Hamilton, transfer from North Carolina, was a 4-star coming out of high school. Coaching change at North Carolina, he ends up with at WVU, so we're going to see how he develops. Not a lot of experience, but there's a lot of raw talent there. And then behind him, you have Jordan McCants, a transfer from Jacksonville State as well. Moving on to the Z, we have Jaden Brays, a familiar name. He transferred from Oklahoma State, and then last year had a lot of injuries and never could get over the hump and didn't play a lot. They're saying he had a real good spring, and he's listed as number 1 in this slot. And I hope he does well. I think he has a lot of talent. They said, John Antonik said last year in fall camp he was really turning a lot of heads, and then he got hurt, and that just he just fizzled. So I'm hoping he can stay injury-free and have a good year. Behind him is Justin Smith-Brown, transfer from South Carolina State. This kid is very long and lean. He may be another one like the Weimer kid that may turn some heads, may get a chance to show his talents. Behind him, and this is one that was a starter under Neil Brown, but he's 3rd string now, is Preston Fox. The kid's pretty reliable, and I think we got a lot of depth wide receiver here. I think if Fox is your 13 guy, I think that's a pretty good room right there. And then behind him is Cyrus Croft, native of Parkersburg, transferred in from Youngstown State. And then on the inside receiver position, we have Rodney Gallagher. He was a holdover from Neil Brown. Had a great end of the season, especially in the bowl game. Has been inconsistent at times, but I'm hoping that he's going to have a breakout year this year. Behind him is Orrin Singleton from Eastern Michigan. He's going to play too. He comes in highly touted, and was sought after in the portal. So we're gonna see how he does. I think he's going to be another one to watch, just kind of like Weimer at the other position. And then behind him you have Logan Ramper, who's a tall kid from Slippery Rock, and people were shocked when we signed him, but they must have saw something in him that caught their attention. So we'll see how that plays out. And then you have Gerard Bowie from Jacksonville State's transfer. And then you only have one who's not on the depth chart, and that is Jarrell Williams. Was a 4-star coming out of high school, and was a holdover from Neil Brown, and but has not produced very well. But he's still in the room, so we'll see how that goes. You know, they're saying, at least the prognosticators are all saying to watch for Cam Vaughn. They think he's going to be the guy that's going to be consistent every week. A lot of people think Gallagher, but he had some inconsistencies, and they said Cam Vaughn never let down ever. He was solid the whole season. So we're gonna see how that plays out.
And
We got a lot more depth than we've had in the past. We lost a few good ones to the portal, but I think they've done a pretty good job here picking up some guys that are going to play. I think.
You mentioned Preston Fox and the fact that he was third on the depth chart. I think one thing remember about him is the punt return and what hands he had. You know, I think he made us all forget what it was like before that. And if you remember back a few years before that, it was a disaster. It was like field of punts. We never returned one. We always fair caught it, and if we were lucky, we caught it. And with Preston Fox back here, a lot of confidence in him. I don't remember maybe one time where he muffed one. Very sure-handed and a pretty good returner once he got the ball in his hands. So I think he's going to be a valuable piece, whether it's on the offensive.
I agree.
Or return to kicks.
I agree. I think Rodriguez has brought in some guys, return guys in the out of the portal, but I think Fox got experience. I think he's going to be a good person to have on your team, on your roster, because he has experience, and like you said, he is sure-handed.
Absolutely.
Mark, again, a really, really good job. I think, as I look at this room, you've got a lot of guys that have numbers. I mean, you mentioned the fellow from Logan Rapper from Slippery Rock, almost 20 yards average a reception. Now, I know it's D2, and I am familiar with Orrin Singleton, played in the MAC, and I live about 30 miles, 50 miles at most from 3 different MAC schools here in Michigan. I know it's asking a lot, but when we think about the average fan, and I think I would include myself in that, when I think of receivers, I think of 2 things. Let's not talk about the tight ends yet. You think about the possession receiver and the guy who can go deep. We were all thinking when Jaden Bray came from Oklahoma State, he was going to be the long guy, and we knew that Hudson Clement was that possession receiver. I mean, he showed that in the 23 season and just reinforced that in 24, and I'm sure he'll do well at Illinois. Who's going to replace him, and who do you think is going to emerge on the long side?
Well, I think you've got Jaden Bray listed as number 1 there, but the kid from I'm anxious to see how the kid from South Carolina State, the Smith Brown kid, and I also want to see how that Weimer does from Idaho State, and also the Singleton kid from Eastern Michigan. We haven't had a whole lot of height in the past 4 or 5 years at receiver, and they've addressed that on some of these guys, and I believe we got some frisbee catching dogs, so to speak, that we haven't had, and I'm hoping these guys will be able to open up that downfield game a little bit more. I mean, it was last year was very unsure whether if you threw one deep, whether they were going to get it or not. And I know it's a different staff, and I'm not knocking the previous staff, but we just didn't seem to get separation, and we very seldom won the jump ball. And I think that's where I'm anxious to see how these guys do that are a little taller. And Rodriguez signed him for a reason. And like you said, the kid from Slippery Rock, 20 yards average catch. I mean, we haven't had that. So let's see how it all plays out. I think we got a solid room there as well. A lot of unknowns, but we got, I think, three first teamers that are really solid, and I believe we can have some success. I think Rodriguez, he runs the spread. It's run heavy, but you've got to use that run to open up your passing game, and I think that's and vice versa. And I think that's what he's shooting for here with some of these taller guys, to be able to get some of that downfield game going.
I think if you look back at last year too, Frank, we talked about this numerous times in our post-game, pre-game shows we did last year. Our receivers, even when we completed passes, 15-yarders or whatever, they were never open. They were always well covered. We just didn't have anybody that could separate. And it really, to me, we had an excellent run game last year, but our pass game was, shaky at best. And part of the reason was we just didn't have those big receivers out there that could get separation or go up and get a jump ball. And hopefully with some of the size he's bringing in, you hope we can do a little bit of that and at least give us a chance to throw the ball downfield every now and then when we need to. Last year it was almost like Hail Mary. We just threw it up and hoped somebody ran under, because rarely were they open and hardly ever wide open. And if they were wide open, it was because of a broken coverage, not because they outran somebody. And that's what I'm not.
Yeah, I think another thing too you got to look at with this zone system. Wide receivers in this system have got to be able to block. And if you go back and look at some of the film from back in the 2000s when Rodriguez was here before, and even carrying over into Bill Stewart's era, those receivers could block too. I mean, I saw Stedman Bailey laid a couple guys out, and some of the guys back when Rodriguez was here before. You've got to be able to block. So that's going to be a factor that's going to play in there too.
Even our quarterbacks can block.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. Moving on to tight ends.
Yeah, we're going to do the tight end here with the time we got left.
Okay, tight end. Tight end is one of those areas that we had people leave. The starter left and transferred to Alabama, and I thought, oh no, we're going to have a problem here. Tight ends in West Virginia under Rodriguez, you're going to have to be able to block, but you're also going to be expected to have good hands. I think back to Tyler Urban was here when Rodriguez was here before. We've got a player that they're bringing in now that's listed as first string, Grayson Barnes, a transfer from Northern Illinois, and he can do both. And I think that was the problem with what Rodriguez saw in the spring is you could do one or the other, but you couldn't do both. And at 85 scholarships, you've got to have players that can do both. And I think he found one in him. They've also got there's 6 total in the room, so you've got decent numbers. Second team is Jacob Barrick from Jacksonville State. He's from Martinsburg, West Virginia. And third team is Ryan Ward out of North Carolina's transfer. And one that is he's in the room, not on the depth chart, is Greg Genross. I thought he would be in there, but he's dropped back a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out. And then you also have Colin McCree and then Noah Braun, Rich Brom's son. We'll see how that goes. I mean, you've got quite a bit of depth in there, but right now they've got 3 newcomers, right on the depth chart. So we'll see how that plays out. I've got high hopes for this kid from Northern Illinois, the Barnes kid. I think he's going to be a player, and I think being able to block and catch both really is going to be an asset to your offense.
Well, this one's a little bit different, Mark, as you've already pointed out, because a room that has 6 players, that's not bad for tight end. But here you're really banking on the guys you brought in. Everybody you mentioned in the top tier are all people you brought in. And, you've got to, there's some replacing to do here, because last year at that position, I'm looking at the numbers here, 50 catches for 500 yards between Cole Taylor and Treylon Davis. And I think you're right. When you think about the parallel to the wideout, who's going to be the possession receiver, who's going to be the long guy. Here you've got who's going to go out and catch the pass, and who's going to be strong in terms of blocking. And you'd like to have, and you see this in the NFL a lot, one person who can do both, and usually multiple tiers of people who can do both. But it looks like this Grayson Barnes from Northern Illinois looks to be the possession receiver, and also a double positive with Jacob Barrick, having played for Rich Rod at Jackson State. He knows the system, and he has caught some passes. He averages about 10 yards a catch, but he just was used sparingly in that regard. But he's primarily a blocker. And then you just hope. This Ryan Ward, if you look at his pedigree, it's pretty damn good. He may, in fact, have the best pedigree in the room, and he came from a Power 4 program. Now, North Carolina hit some rocky times, but if I'm right, I don't think he played last year. No, he didn't play last year, so he wasn't part of that iffy season that led to Mac Brown's departure. Maybe down there they'd like to have Mac Brown back, given what they're going through, the theater in Chapel Hill. But in Rich Rod's system, this position's really important. So and last year and the year before, we just never quite got there. We hoped we would with Cole Taylor, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it wasn't so good.
Yeah, I think again, it's very similar to the offensive line. Rodriguez, I don't think he had anybody on there that was really knocking his socks off, so to speak. And I think that he went out and got Barnes and Ward in that late portal. He went after what he needed. He knew what he needed, and that's what he went after. And I think we got a steal on the kid, on the Barnes kid. I think he's going to be a player. So, in regard to some of the other positions, I've seen how they Sports Illustrated kind of ranked all the positions, and of course they've got the secondary and linebackers and the offensive line kind of lower in those rankings because of all the unknowns. But really, the only sure positions we have are running back with White, and then we got the second team player being the transfer from SMU, and but the position they seem to think that we're the most solid at is defensive tackle, and we've got a lot of depth returning there, and I hope they're right, because I'm hoping that we're going to get a pass rush going, and we'll see how the linebackers do. I don't know about our speed there, but he did recruit some bigger guys. I think there's going to be some shakeup there too. We're not going into that tonight, but I think there's going to be some shakeup there. But apparently the prognosticators seem to think the defensive line is going to be a strong suit on the team, so we'll see. I think the running game, of course, is all going to depend on the offensive line, and same thing with passing with the receivers. But we'll see how it goes. I think he's done some things to improve the secondary, so I'm hoping for good things. We'll not saying we're going to go 12-0, but I think we can win 6 to 8 games. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think Frank and I've talked numerous times over the last couple of months about feeling pretty good about the defense. You got a good core coming back, and some people's got some playing time, and the weak areas have been addressed, we hope. We felt that way last year about the defensive backs um, when he had 15 of them, but we were down to the 13th one and still couldn't find people who could stop anybody. So you feel a little bit more confident in the defense this year, and you just hope that offense can gel. I mean, I think we got some talent, and we got our skill positions intact. You think the offense looks like it's going to be okay. The defense, hopefully it'll step up and be better than what it was last year, and maybe be the strong point of the team. And that would be, with Rodriguez, if you have a strong defense, you usually count on that offense putting up points. I mean, everywhere he's been, they score points. If you remember when he was at West Virginia before, we scored tons of points. We didn't always stop people, but we always outscored them. And so hopefully the defense can come around and be solid, and this can turn out to be a pretty special year. I still feel like it's going to be okay. I'm like you, Mark. I think 7-8 games, I think, is reasonable. And anything above that, just will be icing on the cake.
Well, I think on defense, I think a big thing is he's not really came out and said we're going to run a 4-3 or a 3-4 or a 5-50 series, whatever. He's not saying we're going to run any certain type of defense. We're going to have a multiple scheme. That's going to keep everybody guessing on every play because you don't know what we're going to do. We might line up with 4 linemen, 5 linemen, 3 linemen. Might go into a nickel defense. A lot of options there. So I think that we're going to see some changes there. I think we're going to be a lot more aggressive. And I think
I'll be happy if we don't see any 3-3-5.
Yeah. You might see some variations of it. Yeah, you might see some variations of it because they're going to have 5 defensive backs back there, so a lot, but especially in the Big 12. But I think, and I'm not knocking the previous staff. Well, I am knocking them. We were talking about the separation with the wide receivers, and we were talking about pass defense. A lot of that falls on coaching. I mean, the way that we couldn't get separation, it just never seemed to improve on that. Every year to year, we just never got to see any improvement there. And on defense, I feel like our defense went downhill when they got rid of Koenig. And I think that handicapped Brown the rest of his career. And I think instead of bringing in a true coordinator like Koenig was or like Zach Alley is, I think it really affected our defense. And, Neil Brown was a great guy, but he seemed to cater to a lot to his friends. And I've seen that happen at other schools. Phil Fulmer did a lot of that at UT. And sometimes it'll come back to bite you. But I just think we're going to see a difference in the coaching, and I'm hoping that we get some separation on the wide receivers, and we hope our pass coverage is a lot better.
Yeah. One thing that we haven't talked about, guys, and I'm not sure we really can. I mean, people are talking about it, but at what level of confidence can you have? And that's the competition. What we know for sure is that Texas Tech is putting a lot of money on the table, and it's not just in football. I think it's pretty clear that being the lead brand, so to speak, and they can't just be a lead brand in terms of marketing. You got to deliver the goods. You got to win games. I think Texas Tech sees themselves as the possible successors to the Oklahomas in Texas in the Big 12. But whether or not they're going to be able to do it this year, we'll see. And whether they'll be able to do it at all is a big question, because it's tough to be. It's just going to be tough to do. It may well be that at the end of the day, for an extended period of time, what the Big 12 will be known for, not is who's going to win it this year, Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State, but it's anybody's league. Will Kansas State be as good as they were last year? They faded toward the end. Will Iowa State be in there? Arizona State surprised everybody. Indiana did that last year. We've talked about that a lot of times about what Indiana did. And West Virginia has an opportunity, I think. That's why those opening games are extremely important,
Yep.
not only to get your players to play together, but get some wins under your belt. Fans certainly are ready for it. But I don't think I can remember a time in my career of doing this kind of work when I was less confident of being able to say, here's what the league looks like, and this is what to expect. Because these chess pieces get, Greg, they get moved endlessly, just endlessly.
Yeah, that's what when you talk about how many games we're going to win. I mean, there's really just no way to know. You don't know. We may have a really good team, but everybody else might have a little bit better team. You just don't know, just based on all the movement around and everything that's happening. So it's just hard to say. I think that, looking at our team, you feel good about our team and our coaching staff and all that. But you just don't know because you don't know what everybody else is going to have and what everybody else is going to do. And it's just going to be interesting to see. And breaking news, Frank, here, I know I'm always one to break the news. Javon Small didn't go first in the NBA draft, but a guy named Flagg, I think is his name, Cooper Flagg, I believe you called him, went to Dallas in the first pick.
How about that? Yeah. I watched Flagg play for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Isn't that the Flagg we're talking about? I'm just kidding. The news would have been if he wasn't the first pick. Yeah. It's just, it's amazing. But when you think you got to give it to Duke, they just keep on reloading with these kinds of players going way back. I mean, you go back to Danny Ferry in the 80s and all those guys, and they just keep on reloading these players. They do it. The one team I think we always have to watch in the Big 12, now that they're back in the Big 12, they were not in the league for, my God, because when the Southwestern Conference disbanded, the Big 12 didn't take them, is TCU, because TCU has the money. They have the location there in the Metroplex in Dallas. They have the coaching staff. After they went to the college football playoff a couple of years ago, they've really leveled off. It's been 2 years now. This will be the third year. I just don't expect TCU to stay where they've been. I'm not sure they have the capacity to go back up, but where they were a couple of years ago to get into the college football playoff. But, not to contradict what I said a few minutes ago, who's the competition, but I think you always got to be wary of TCU. We'll see.
I think BYU is going to be good, and I think Kansas State's going to be. They're predicted to do pretty well as well.
Yeah.
We'll just see how it all pans out. I do think, like I said, I don't think we're going to go undefeated, but I do think you're going to see if we can beat Robert Morris Ohio University and then beat Pitt. I think you're going to see that state and the fan base just come together and get excited again. I think you're going to see a buzz you haven't seen in a long time, probably since Rodriguez was here before. Not to say that we can't go on a losing streak, but I think, if we beat Pitt, get a little momentum, and you believe in yourself, you can go to Kansas and get a win. You just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I look back when I first went to work at West Virginia when I was the trainer there. We didn't have the most talented players. We had some good players. We did have some skilled players, good quarterbacks, but our line was not. We weren't on the level of Penn State or Pitt or Maryland. But those guys believed in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of it. If you believe in yourself, that's how you win games and you can upset some teams. And I think, too, we talked about the coaching staff and relating to young players. I think 2 players on our team, on our coaching staff that were on our team was Pat White and Noel Devine. Those guys played at West Virginia during a period when we were successful, and they never got shaken. They knew how to win games, and cool as a cucumber back there, in the backfield. And I think they can help relate that. I'm hoping to some of these kids, and if they start believing in themselves, I think you just never know what can happen.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. You get that confidence built up. I'm sorry, Frank, and also, you're starting the season off not at Penn State, not at Pitt. You're starting the season off with games that you could and should win, and that builds that confidence up a little bit. So
Yep.
hopefully, going into the Big 12 season, we'll have a little bit of confidence and have some wins under our belt, and that'll help us down the road. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, Frank. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say that I'm watching the Voice of College Football comments, and Timothy Green, it's good to see Timothy back. He said, watch out for Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Kansas State has everything in place to continue to sustain the success they've had. Great coach. They've got kids who want to be in Manhattan. And if you've ever been to Manhattan, you know that's saying something. You got to want to be there because it's a different location. I'm being very blunt. But it's the Oklahoma State issue, Tim. Oklahoma State doesn't exist to be an also ran in sports, particularly football. And things are not looking good in Stillwater. This is a huge year, not only for the head coach, but also for the program. They have to do better. They can't continue. And so talk about, you talked about knowing how to win. They have a culture there. They have a coach. He was the quarterback back in the day. And so I agree with Tim. I think I would view Oklahoma State as a sleeper team that needs to show it can be competitive again, because last year was shocking.
Yeah, I was going to mention Oklahoma State. You don't expect them to continue down the road that they're on right now. And when their backs are against the wall, look at their history, you have to think that they're going to bounce back. So yeah, I was going to mention them as well. So there's several teams in the Big 12, and I think it's not going to be any different what it used to be. And that is, you're going to have a whole conference of teams that can win any week, can beat you any week. And I think that's one of the unique things about the Big 12 compared to some of these other conferences, even the SEC. When you look at teams today, used to, there were 8, 9, 10 just phenomenal teams. Now you've got 4, 3, 4, 5 that are really, really, really good, and then everybody else is just kind of average. I think in the Big 12, you may not have that super, super good team, but you got good teams from the top all down to the last 1 or 2. And so anything can happen in the Big 12. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it really would be.
We really do appreciate you, man. Great insight, and we got to get you back in to do the defense before the season gets going. And I know you'll have it.
Enjoy it. So.
Oh well, yeah. I was going to say we're going to talk about every the whole roster, but that hour goes by in like 10 minutes, and we did get the offensive side for the most part in, but we'll get you back, and we'll work on the defense as well, and running shy. But we really do appreciate it. And Frank, before we all get out, you want to go ahead and talk about our guest next week, and then we'll say good night.
Very good. Darren will put up, we're going to talk basketball a bit next week. We haven't done that for a while. And here's a guy that talk about name recognition. Mark, again, does a great job of lining up guests for us. And, when you go back and look at, I don't care when you started watching Mountaineer basketball, but that game against UNLV, when UNLV was ranked number 1, they came into Morgantown. Jerry Tarkanian was quoted as saying the night before he was having a libation in a local bar, basically saying, "What the hell am I doing in Morgantown, West Virginia?" And the next day,
let me add to that. And I think I said this on another previous show. I was at a coach's clinic down in Charlotte. Jerry Tarkanian was there, and this was a few years afterwards. And Catlett was getting ready to retire, quit. And so I mentioned to him, I said, well, actually I ended up, I don't know how this happened. I'm awful shy. But I ended up sitting in a booth with Jerry Tarkanian and Jim Valvano and Gary Williams from Maryland at the time. And I told Shark, I said, why don't you come back to Morgantown? We'd love to have you as a head coach. He said, I'm going to tell you what. He said, the night we played there, and I was there, by the way, he said it was the most electric atmosphere and the best atmosphere he ever remembered playing in. He said it was absolutely phenomenal. He said, but man, did we walk into a buzzsaw?
And Tim rose to the occasion of look at those numbers there. He was scoring, he was rebounding. When you look at those 5 categories, he contributed all away. At center. And so we're looking forward to talking a bit about basketball, because we've got to get knowledgeable about the basketball team, just the way we have been getting knowledgeable with Mark's help and others about with Keenan Cummings with the football team. And by the way, talking about basketball, news broke this afternoon that the women are going to get tested really early. They're going to be playing in a tournament in the Bahamas. And they're going to be, what's going to be very interesting, it's going to be their current WVU coach against the previous WVU coach on the women's side. She's at Minnesota now. And Minnesota is one of the schools, West Virginia, I think Alabama, I think Ohio State was the other. So 18 tournament, that's going to be fun. So we'll talk a little basketball as well as football next week.
That's right. So always enjoy talking about basketball. Tim Carney, you look back and people will name greats and all that. That's a guy there that was just a solid player, worked hard, fans loved him, and just had a great career at WVU. You don't hear a ton about him, but you remember that name. And I remember watching him play, and what a great player. It's going to be fun to talk to him and to talk some basketball. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. We're a little overtime tonight, but that's okay. We enjoyed it. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now here on the New River Network and the Voice of College Football. And as we sign off, Frank will promo that we do for the Voice of College Football. We hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and we look forward to coming to you again next Wednesday night. Mark Parsons, thanks a great deal to you, as always. Good night, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Frank Fear here from Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now, and we're pleased to be part of the Voice of College Football National Network. Mark Rogers and staff have done a great job with the network, and it's constantly adapting and expanding to bring content to you. Many of you are already following us on X and Facebook and Instagram, and if you're not, here are the URLs, the links to go to and take advantage of all the great content that's there for you. Even if you do that, you may not know some of the new doings at the Voice of College Football Network. One is a new podcast options that already thousands of people are taking advantage of. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast networks, and we encourage you to do that. Perhaps the biggest drum roll is the new Voice of College Football website with plenty of content, everything that you want to enjoy and can enjoy about college football. And remember, one thing that makes the Voice of College Football Network different is that we're 24/7, 12 months a year. It never ends. It's college football in the winter, the spring, the summer, and of course, during the fall. We also want to announce, and Mark Rogers again and staff have done a great job with this, a relationship with Amazon.com. And here's Mark to tell you more about it.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the voice of college football.
Well, that's it for now. Let me thank you for your loyalty. The Voice of College Football Network. This is Frank Fear for Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Hope to see you on our channel and other channels, VOCF. Take care, everybody.